Since World War II, we've been subjected to a large number of wars, conducted for less and less excusable reasons. In World War II, we had a hot war, then we had a cold war, and we had a war on drugs, and now we've had war on crime, war on carbon, in terms of carbon dioxide, and we had war on terror, and most recently and absurdly, a war on cell division, the demonization of the idea of cloning, when in fact it's the basic process by which all of us replace our cells and grow from one-celled organisms into people. One manifestation of this fear is something that's been made very popular in science fiction and fantasy movies in particular, the idea of the clone army, which appears in Star Wars: Attack of the Clones, and also in Stargate in the form of the Replicators, and in Doctor Who in the form of the Cybermen to some extent, and the Sontarans. Over and over, there's this scenario of people being attacked by clone armies. This is a strange thing to be afraid of, because one's first concern when being shot at by a soldier should be the fact that one's being shot at, not the method of conception of the soldier. Also, the idea of raising a clone army like the one in Star Wars would defeat the power trying to do it long before the clone army reached maturity, because trying to raise soldiers and pay for their upbringing, their feeding, and their education from the moment of birth is an extremely expensive proposition, and also tends to cost one the element of surprise. Neglecting for a moment the costs of transporting armies around the galaxy at the speed of light, where they would have virtually infinite mass, anyone who wanted to raise a clone army would first need an army of mothers, with today's technology, to birth all of the soldiers, and it would be hard to convince them all to carry the same child. Once that was done, it would take a long time to raise the children, and it would be very hard to raise them in secret if you didn't have an alternate planet to put all of them on. Also, if you have an army of identical soldiers, it's very hard in the military to know what you're facing from moment to moment, and it's hard to predict exactly what life skills of your soldier might come in handy at any particular point. If you have a group of people who've all been given the same upbringing and all have the same genetic makeup, that would severely compromise the adaptability of the army, and if the enemy knew that all of your soldiers were identical, they could devise strategies specifically tailored to the vulnerabilities of that one genetic makeup. For instance, they could make a genetically modified disease specifically tailored to the vulnerabilities of all your identical people, and your army would be very vulnerable as a result. Finally, people go to war and are violent in large measure, I think, because we are the species that knows we are going to die long in advance, and fighting, killing someone, gives a temporary relief from the fear of dying, a temporary sense of power over mortality and death. If we remove the basic fear, the fear of aging and death, that should, I would expect, make people on the whole less inclined toward war. Particularly if you have only a few years to lose, you're not losing much by going to war. But if you have a long lifespan, you might think more than twice about giving up all those potential years.